Alright, we've got our actuator with all the perishable items removed from them. We've got a housing, or a body here, guide rod here. We've got our output shaft and 2 pistons and your 2 end caps. So these are the items that you'll need to put back together the actuator with a new repair kit. And here is the repair kit for a size 10 actuator. Inside of it is all the washers, guide bands, and O-rings needed to put this actuator back together in a new condition. It comes with a repair sheet. This here is with each kit that you buy. It shows diagrams of where the bearings, the O-rings, and that type stuff goes. On the flip side of it is actual written instructions on how to go about replacing all these O-rings. So basically this video tutorial in a written form here. So if you have any questions, you can go to this sheet here and it can help you answer them. So we're at the point here to start putting this actuator back together. We've got our seal kit here. We've got it spread out with the O-rings and the bushings, also the bolts for the end caps. Got all of our parts here. The grease that we use on standard temperature and low temperatures is Sapphire Low Temp 2. If this is a high temp actuator, this seal kit will need to have a high temp seal kit. So we need to make sure what type actuator you got, a standard, high temp, or low temp. There are different O-ring seals that go in the actuator based on the temperature range of the actuator. So as I said, we use the same grease for low temp and standard. And if it was a high temp, we use a Sapphire Premier by roll call. So that grease there is for high temp actuators. Okay, so first step we're going to do is we're going to grease all the parts. So you're going to take a proportion of grease here and grease the inside of the bore of the actuator. You just want to wipe it all around completely through the whole bore of the actuator. So not a substantial amount of grease, but you want enough in there that will keep everything lubricated over the time. So and we'll lubricate the pinion here. Put a little grease on it, on the wear surfaces of the pinion. Okay, and then we'll take the piston. We'll do the same thing with it. We want to make sure we got grease on the output shaft teeth of the piston, on the guide rods, inside the groove for the O-ring. We'll grease the other piston. End cap, you want to put a little grease down in the guide rod holes. All right, so that's the first step of reassembly is just getting grease on all your components, and we're ready to start installing the seals and bearings. All right, all the hard components are greased. So the next step we want to do is we want to take our soft components, all the stuff that are in the kit, the O-rings, not necessarily the guide bearings and the washers, but all the O-rings, we want to put some grease on them. And so pretty much similar to the same way, just take and grease them up all the way around, a little grease to make sure that they're going to be lubricated when they're assembled. So we got our piston main O-rings, end cap O-rings here. These are for sealing around the end cap. And we have our pinion O-ring. This is the one that goes in the housing in the top. And then we have our O-rings here for our guide rods. These will go in the end caps and in the pistons. All right, so we've got all those lubricated. We've got one more here. All right, this one here is for the body. Yeah, the body seal. All right, so we've got all those lubricated. All right, we've got everything lubricated. So what we'll do is we'll start. We'll put the O-rings and bushings in the piston. So we'll start with the main O-ring. We'll just put it in, bring it over the shaft, roll it around until it's in the groove. Just kind of rub around it, make sure it's in the groove good. All right, and then we'll take a bushing here. All right, we'll put it in. Just start it down in the groove. Just work it around, and you can see we've got it down in the groove. Now we'll take a piston O-ring. All right, so we've got the bushing in, the guide rod bushing. So now we want to take a O-ring, and we'll do the same thing from this side here. We'll start it in and just work it down in the groove. Again, back to what I had originally said when we took it apart, you want to make sure that your guide rod bushing's in toward the teeth side, and the O-ring is to the outer part of the piston. So we've got that put back together. Now we'll take the other piston here, and we'll do the same thing. We'll take the outer ring, we'll put it on the piston. All right, rub around it, make sure it's seated good, and we'll take a bushing. Put it in the O-ring. You want to make sure it's seated good, and the gap. Let's see here. Make sure that that your gap there between your O-ring is seated correctly down in the piston. So all right, we've got that in. We're ready to put the other O-ring in. We'll do the same thing. We'll slide it in on top of the bushing there. Go in, make sure everything's seated good. And we've got the piston O-rings and bushing installed. So we're ready to put the bushings and the O-rings in the end caps. So we'll start with the end cap without the travel stops on it. And you can do either one of these in order, so we want to put the bushing in. So we'll take and put the bushing in the groove. You might want to have a screwdriver, pop it up in. Just make sure it's seated in there real well. And then we want to put an O-ring on top of it. We can put the bushing in on the other side. Okay. All right, then we'll put the O-ring in on top of that bushing. Well, one side has a groove that's wider than the other. That's the wider groove is the one that the bushing and the O-ring goes into. This side over here, this side over here is just got a small groove just for the bushing. They're very easily, you can tell them apart very easily. All right, we'll do the other end cap same way. Alright, we've got this installed, the O-ring on top of the bushing and the bushing end, and then we'll put our end cap seals on the outside of both of the end caps. Just put it around, make sure it's down next to the bottom. Alright, now we have all of our seals and our end caps. Alright, now we need to put our O-ring seal on our pinion and our bushing on it. So we'll put our bushing on first. Bushing goes in the larger groove up toward the top of the lower part of the pinion here. So slide it on, make sure it's sealed on good. Then we'll take our O-ring and we'll put our O-ring in the lower groove of the pinion or the output shaft. Alright, so now we have our bushings and stuff on our pinion. So now we'll take our body, and what we'll need to do is we'll need to install the O-ring in the top portion of the groove. So we'll take the O-ring here, slide it in from the top. Make sure it's in the groove. Alright, so we've got our O-ring installed on that.